in this presentation, we'll just highlight three. I mean, the first one talks about lack of economic growth and development. To those people, they feel that the main problem is that. The second problem that will reflect on, other people say it's bad policies. That's why we have all these problems which comrades are listing. I mean, others that fall in that category might complain about lack of implementation. I saw in one group, they were saying that sometimes policies of government are not followed properly. So that could be one view. And then the third view that we want to highlight is what we call the fact that the working class or the poor don't have political power and they don't control the means of production. So we will outline those three views. Can you just press forward? I mean, the first view is what we call a lack of economic growth and development. They claim that there's lack of inclusive economic growth and development, and they feel that if that question is addressed, the issues of poverty, inequalities, and unemployment will be history.
Inclusive meaning?
Inclusive, it means that it will benefit everyone in society. It won't only benefit the CEOs, it will benefit ordinary people in various ways, because it assumes that if there are resources, then it will be possible to build proper schools and so on and so on. And this view comes out strongly from, I'm assuming comrades know that the government has come up with what they call a new development plan, which should be taking us up until 2030. They outline what the country need that plan to address its social problems. This plan, among other issues, it prioritizes high unemployment and poor quality education. And they feel it needs to be prioritized. And this plan has been adopted by government, and we'll try, if comrades are interested to know, deeper about that plan, we can get summaries so that comrades can read at their own time about this plan that has been adopted by this government and also by the ruling party, the ANC. This explanation of the problems has been criticized by a number of people, that it does not work for the majority. People who criticize, they argue that economic growth and development does not necessarily then trickle down to benefit everyone. Remember, Comrade Caron asked, meaning who, when you say it's inclusive. All those people I was giving examples, people argue it does not really follow that if you have economic growth, that it will benefit everyone. In fact, it mainly benefits the rich. Then if you proceed to there's a slide.
I'm sorry, when you say economic growth,
yeah.
What is that? How is that measured?
Economic growth could be measured through the GDP, and then the growth development product, meaning that the goods and services that have been produced in that particular year, they grow by a certain rate, and then they will claim that there is growth in the economy. And the problem with that understanding of economic growth is that it focuses, on certain statistics. Sometimes post-year, I think we saw some growth in the economy, but we still sat with the problem of unemployment. Hence, other people spoke about jobless growth. So growth does not really necessarily mean that everyone benefits and so on and so on. But if you look at this picture, the wealthy people in this case, they laugh to say they always tell us if they grow the economy, everyone will benefit. You can see in the picture, we think it represents it captures what really happens. And in this picture, you could easily insert, you can see it's only white males. I think in the post-apartheid South Africa, you could easily insert few black faces. Who comes to mind, who could be inserted among those wealthy people who are laughing? Cyril Ramaphosa, Tokyo, and then other comrades even include Zuma. But I think I will emphasize inserting Tokyo, Cyril, who's the other guy who's now Patrice Motsepe. Yeah. I'm emphasizing the question of few black faces that comes in. It's not that they are in the majority. And the ANC post-apartheid took a conscious decision to try and de-racialize this picture. And the way they did that, they embarked on certain policies, I'm sure comrades know, the Black Economic Empowerment, which then allowed some of these few names that we have mentioned to be included in this class of the wealthy people. I mean, we call it the capitalist, or we call it the bosses. They come under different names. Okay? Now, the question we thought it's important to pose, if the problem, the root cause is understood to be a lack of economic growth and development. The question we then posed, who are the key actors required to act on this problem? And for us, in that view, the people who come to mind are economic experts, because the issue is about economy. The capitalists will also come in, the government representatives will also be involved to talk to this problem of lack of inclusive growth. So those are the key actors within that solution. Okay? Can you move? And then view 2.
Do you have any question of this first
Yeah,
view?
on the first view. Yeah, are there questions on that first view before we move to the second one?
Here.
Yeah, please, comrade, interrupt, and then so that we can move clearer.
Okay.
So we can move for now. Okay. Remember, at some point I will ask you what you think about that. Or maybe let me pose that question now. We have just outlined view 1, and we indicated who are the key actors. What's your view about that view that claims that the root cause of our own problems is because there's no inclusive economic growth and development? That's why we sit with all these problems of lack of service delivery, lack of resources, and so on and so on. To them, if you resolve that question, everything is answered. So what do you think about that? Do you think they speak rubbish? Do you think it will go a long way to address the problems?
Can you say again the root of?
Almost in view 1,
Yes.
the way they explain the problem, they say there's a lack of inclusive economic growth and development. And they believe if you address that problem, all the other problems of inequality, unemployment, and poverty get resolved. Some people argue that what the main problem in SA is that we have bad policies. That those policies don't speak to the problems faced by the poor. I mean, one example that we give here is the policy of privatization, where you involve the private sector in the provision of services. Let's take maybe waste removal. I know in Khayelitsha, waste collection in the past was done by the council, but can't remember the years now. When was Nguga a mayor in Khayelitsha? I can't remember what date. I think around about 97 or so.
97.
Yeah, around that period. In Khayelitsha, they began to introduce private sector. It was called Billy Hunting because the idea was to promote entrepreneurs as the way of, I don't know, creating now, I don't know, if you like, black bosses. So what will happen if you involve those people, the private sector? Their main concern would be the making of profit than providing a service. Again, using this thing of refuse collection. In the past, refuse collection was done twice a week, but they then cut it to one. Because if you send your trucks more than one doing rounds, someone who's driven by profit making will be concerned about the cost of fuel, will be concerned about the money she or he must pay to the workers and the service that will go to the infrastructure or to the trucks that is using. As a result, the quality of service that you end up getting in Khayelitsha or in any other part of the country will be poor. And sometimes they won't collect at all because they don't have enough resources to provide that service. So there has been a blame put to this policy. Others blame lack of implementation. It could be, I'm trying to think now of around health issues. Some people will be happy with the performance of, what's his name, Aaron Motsoaledi, and would say that maybe really the problem is with the implementation of a good policy. I mean, other people would even say under Thabo there were good policies, but you just had a problem with the managers. We didn't really know what the man was up to. So the blame is more on lack of implementation. Now this view, its emphasis on bad policies as root causes is criticized for not explaining why such bad policies in the first place were adopted. Because you need to establish if these policies are bad, how come a democratically elected government adopt what is called bad policies? So we pose a similar question: who are the key actors in relation to bad? If you see a problem as bad policies, who will be the key actors to address that problem? It will be policy experts, people with knowledge in those particular fields, so that they can come with proposals that come with good policies, I suppose. Who else will be involved? Government representatives who must draw the leadership from other stakeholders to thresh out appropriate policies. We all have a sense of this notion of stakeholders. So there's the idea that you try and involve key knowledgeable people to come with solutions. A critique is that both view 1 and view 2 do not place the poor at the center of finding solutions to social problems. Some external forces or some other people, some other institution is required to resolve the problems faced by the poor. So that's how these both two views are criticized. Any comments on that view, bad policies? Or a view that says policies are good, the problem is with people who are not implementing them. The problem with people who don't have skills. Otherwise, everything is fine. In terms of this view, it argues that the working class does not have political power to pursue its demands and interests. That's why we are experiencing all these problems. It's because political power is not in the hands of the poor. It's not in the hands of the people who are experiencing all these problems that comrades were listing. But what is political power? Political power basically is one's capacity in society to implement or realize their own aims and objectives and agenda. It's like if you set yourself certain goals, certain aims, or within your organization you identify certain demands. If you are not strong enough, your organization and your mass mobilization, it's unlikely that your aims will be met. So the question of political power in this context, in a capitalist society, is that it is the capacity between the two main classes, in this case the capitalists and the working class, to implement their own agenda and interest. So if one class, in this case the majority, the working class, does not hold that political power, they will continue to experience the problems that are being highlighted. If we take now those in power in the political office, the ANC government, if we reflect a bit on the policies which is said will flag for after T, if you look at some of those policies, they serve a particular class in society. They serve the interests of the rich. The role of the government facilitate or create a conducive environment for business to come in, to grow the economy, so that in a way, the problem of jobs and inequalities is addressed. Remember, in the view one, I indicated how the National Development Plan fit with that view, because they feel that if you need to address the question of economy to resolve these problems. But those policies, if you try and dig deep about them, they serve the interest of the capitalist. The other problem, which is linked now, the means of production not being in our hands. What are the means of production, comrades? Basically, yeah, self-explanatory. In the farms, they produce food that we're supposed to eat. I'm sure you know by now that we don't only rely on the food that is produced in our farms. South Africa most is part of the global economy. Sometimes it will import the food we eat from other countries, right? So, but the means of production that we're referring to for now are those that are within our boundaries, South Africa: the farms, the factories, the mines, the supermarkets, the banks. All those means of production are crucial for our lives. They are owned by a minority. And that minority underclass society is referred to as bosses, as capitalists. They come under different names. The production is for making profit and not about meeting our own needs. While it is the working class, in this case the majority, that produces wealth, the capitalists take all the wealth for themselves after paying wages and other costs of running business. So in all workplaces, I'm sure if you speak to your aunt or your brother, or maybe you're once employed, you're now unemployed, or depending on your discussion you once had with someone who's working, the majority of people in all workplaces are the workers. But the decisions on how to run that business. The control on decision making is in the hands of few people in those various companies. This majority, they work in certain cases for 8 hours or more, and the product that they create in various companies, the person who decides what happens to it in terms of how to produce it, the cost, where it is sold, and so on, it's decided by the minority. The payment that people receive, like your wages, if you compare the wage that workers get and you compare the wages with the value of what they have produced, you'll see that the relationship between the employer and the employee is exploitative. Because if I create something, if all of us here are able to create, the value of what we produce is less than what we get in return, that must show that there's the relationship between the person who have employed us is exploitative. They are exploiting us by taking the bulk of what we have produced. Are we getting that, comrades? So long as so long as things happen in this way, where the minority in workplaces is in control, the means of production are not in the hands of the majority, and the political power is not in our hands. The question is, why is that the case? It is because at the moment, the majority is not strong enough to pursue its own agenda. For things to change fundamentally, the working class have to engage in collective struggles that really culminate in the defeat of those who currently hold political power and the bosses who own and control the means of production. If those who don't have political power, who don't own the means of production, if they don't engage in struggles which seek to defeat what we'll call their class enemies, will continue to have these problems. Now we pose a similar question with this view. Who are the key actors needed to tackle these issues? In this view, the poor themselves, the working class broadly defined, are the key. There is no external force other than yourselves. You are basically your own liberators. You can't outsource your own liberation either to other classes or to other people. It should be the poor themselves that engage and struggle with clarity what are the root causes, so that they are able to resolve this problem of political power and the control of means of production.